Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're gonna be reviewing If I Could Do It All Over Again, I'd Do It All Over You by the band Caravan.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
The title for this album is actually so long that the number of characters in the title for the video reached a 99 staggering characters. Now that might sound to you like nothing very important, but the limit for a title for a YouTube video is actually 100 characters, so luckily we haven't reached that one yet. Anyway, here are some of my favorite bits from this album. So just about 2 weeks ago, we reviewed on this series the album by Caravan called For Girls Who Grow Plump in the Night. And if you remember, I wasn't too excited about that one after listening to it. My review of it was fine I guess, but I guess I was just pretty underwhelmed by it. But the gods of randomness have decided to give me yet another chance to redeem myself from this band, and they gave me today's album, which is of course If I Could Do It All Over Again, I'd Do It All Over You. So I don't really see a reason to reintroduce you to the band. I've talked about them at length in the last video, so if you want to get to know Caravan, you can go and check that one out. But what I will tell you about today's album is that this one is widely considered to be Caravan's realization album. This is their second studio album. Their debut wasn't that well understood by themselves and by the masses, and it really showed, and thus it didn't quite reach the same success as of course this album has. This one would go on to define the Canterbury scene sound, and that's a pretty much influential thing that Caravan have done in their early days. Now before I start talking about this album, there is one thing that I don't believe I've quite emphasized completely in the last video about Caravan, and that's my personal relationship with this band prior to actually starting 365 Days of Prog. So as you might know, the only album I knew by this band before getting into the series was In the Land of Grey and Pink, which is obviously their most well-known album and most well-received one. Now I will tell you all that my rating for In the Land of Grey and Pink, for now at least, would be a fine rating of 9 out of 10, seeing that I am not a huge Caravan fan and not a huge fan of this album. Like, I really love it, but I don't think that it's perfect. Of course, the songs that I really love are the title track and Golf Girl, and my all-time favorite one from them of course is 9 Feet Underground. It was my second most played song in 2021. I absolutely love the shit out of that track. But when it comes to songs like Winter Wine or Love to Love You, I don't quite get them at least, and thus this album isn't perfect in my opinion. So yeah, when it comes to Caravan, I am not a blind fan of them. I don't think that they have strictly perfect music to their name. I think that they're pretty good. A perfect Caravan album in my opinion would have been just 9 Feet Underground stretched up to 40 minutes, but as of now, I don't think there is one singular album by them that I truly love. And when it comes down to it, the album that we are reviewing today has laid the groundworks for what is to become In the Land of Grey and Pink, but at no single point does actually evoke the same feelings as I have for that that album and this specific piece of music. Now, this album today is called If I Could Do It All Over Again, I'd Do It All Over You, and that's actually also the name of the title track for this album, which is the first track to be found on it. Now, this first track is a pretty short one and it's not that progressive, but it kind of sort of became a surprise hit for the band, and that was pretty good for them, seeing as their counterparts from the Wildflowers, the Soft Machine, were already pretty successful from their debut album, and it was time for Caravan to also shine, and this title track definitely showed that. But as I said, personally, I think that this is a pretty nice song for the masses to put on the radio once in a while, but as for a prog fan, this was definitely not what I came here for. But fortunately, I wouldn't really have to wait long, because the next song coming after this one would be a whole lot more interesting. The next song on the album is called And I Wish I Were Stoned, Don't Worry, and this one basically, at least to me, marks the real beginning for this album, showing a very interesting change and shift of sound into something that is much more progressive and much more enjoyable, at least in my opinion, to listen to. But this is the point where I believe we have to take a pause and talk about the people found on this album making its music. So firstly, of course, we have Pi Hastings doing the guitars and of course the vocals. Then we have Richard Sinclair on his very well-known bass with his very well-made grooves, and then we have his cousin David Sinclair on the keyboards. And the last official band member to be found on here is Richard Coughlin on the drums and percussions. But I will be damned if I don't mention the last person who's not technically a part of the band at this time, but is basically present on this entire album, and that's actually Pi's brother, Jimmy Hastings, on saxophone and flute. So yeah, Caravan are basically your all-Christian family band. And the reason I have to point all these guys out is because all of them are integral to this album's success. At no single point does it feel like anyone is just playing their part and doing nothing more than that. Everyone is very innovative and doing some really interesting things with their playing, and it really shows. No one here is subdued. You can at every single point in this album hear everyone playing. There's like not one person that is just so, overshadowed by everyone else, and I truly love that, and I think that this is why this album in its essence actually works. But as I said, the Caravan sound isn't one that I'm inherently attracted to, and I think that there are no real flaws about this album. Well, except for one thing. You see, in a song like 9 Feet Under the Ground, what really makes it great, despite having most of the same sounds as this album, is the fact that it has very highly contrasting parts and sections within the song itself. And this album just kind of really didn't have that. It wasn't that repetitive to say, but it just featured very similar sections throughout most of the tracks and within them and without them. So I kind of don't know what I think about that, because it is just the real Canterbury sound, but it's not as meaty and interesting as I found in The Land of Grey and Pink as a whole to be. I think that this album only features good songs, and the best ones and the better ones are of course the longer tracks, but as a whole I don't really see anything about this album that at least made me want to come back to it, and that's quite unfortunate. But if there's one quite eerie thing that I found about this album is how similar I find this one to be as to Pink Floyd's The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Now I don't mean that they sound the same, but my personal reception of this album in particular would be translated quite well to that album by Pink Floyd as well. Both of these albums have that whimsical English folk rock sound to them, which is really nice to listen to, but I couldn't tell you a single moment on both of these albums which really gave me goosebumps or actually managed to form some connection within me to the music I was listening to. It is fine music, very well made, very well written, but none of it is quite catchy enough for me to say, you know what, I think that there's something really special about this one. Of course, as is known, both bands would go on to create bigger and more interesting things in the future, but as of now I do believe that these two albums are pretty fine. And when it comes to today's album, I could quite appreciate it objectively, but when it came to the subjective reception of it, I just couldn't bring myself quite to it. And I think about what I just said in this entire video, I kind of made it seem like I really don't like this album, when in actuality that isn't the case. This is a really good album. I just don't think that it's a very memorable one or one that I'm connected to personally. I do think that it's very nice, very good, very fun, quite meaty, although it could have been more, and thus I enjoyed it quite a bit, but again, I don't see myself coming back to it anytime soon. But for that matter, I would have to say that I preferred this one more than For Girls Who Grow Plump in the Night, because this one had a lot of variety in it, and the whimsical nature of it is definitely more than For Girls Who Grow Plump in the Night, and that's something that I really quite appreciate. So it seems like lately we've been getting a lot of very interesting covers on the list, and luckily for us today, this isn't the case. I don't think that this is a very interesting cover all that much, and you know what, I really don't have the time or bother to actually talk a lot about this one, so let's get this over with. So yeah, this cover really isn't a lot. It features what it is actually like in its essence, which is just a bunch of teenagers just doing their thing, minding their own business, creating their own nice music, and doing so together. I think that the band logo is pretty fine, but I'm pretty happy that they changed it later on to something that's more memorable and enjoyable to view, and somehow they managed to cram this entire title for this album in just one line that honestly most people wouldn't be able to discern when looking at this album cover for the first time. The favorite thing I have for this album is actually the trees that surround them. I don't know, they have really cool leaves. I don't know what type of tree that is. If anyone here is like a botanist or something like that, tell me what type of tree that is. It's a pretty cool tree. Look at those leaves. This album, well, it's a perfect middle ground between plump and pink, and thus it will be getting a very fine rating of 8 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Changes by the band Caterpillar. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wanham and Wrist of Kings. You are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description. Another thing before I finish off this video is that from now, the 20th of July, I'm actually not here in my house. I'm actually in Germany attending the Night of the Prog Festival. I've been waiting for it for a while. I'm gonna hear bands that we've reviewed on the list, and I'm very excited for it. I don't know if anyone watching this video is actually gonna be there, but if you are or your friends are, you can find me if you look up the person with this shirt that features my channel logo on it. Is it weird? Yes, probably it is, but I don't know. I'd love to get people talking about prog and, you know, maybe get to know my channel, and that's pretty cool. But for now, that's all I have. So that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.